I don't know what still hurts more, the lie my son told, or the fact that he didn't think I'd find out. When you reach my age, you stop expecting grand things from your children. You stop expecting perfect holidays or long phone calls or surprise visits. You settle for the little things, a check-in call, a birthday message, a hug once in a while. I've lived long enough to understand that life gets busy, that kids drift, that time changes all of us. But nothing prepares you for the moment you realize your own child has erased you. My name is Margaret. I'm 68 years old, and I raised my son, Daniel, mostly on my own after his father passed. I gave him everything I had: time, love, sacrifice, sleepless nights, second jobs, missed meals, all of it. Mothers do that without keeping score. But as he grew older, he changed. Or maybe he didn't change. Maybe I just started noticing the little things. He stopped bringing me around his friends. He kept me out of his plans. He brushed off my calls. He treated me like an obligation instead of a mother. Still, I never imagined he'd go so far. It was a Sunday evening when it happened, a day that should have been quiet and warm, full of rest and prayer, and the smell of my lavender candle burning in the kitchen window. But instead, it became the day that broke my heart in a way I didn't know was possible. A neighbor of mine, sweet old Carol, came banging on my door. I thought something bad had happened to her, but instead she said, "Margaret, are you all right? Why did Daniel tell everyone you moved away?" Moved away? I stood there confused, frozen. I hadn't moved anywhere. I had been in that same house for 35 years. "And there's more," she whispered. "He's hosting a big family dinner tonight. Everyone is there. Your sisters, your cousins, even the grandkids. People have been asking why you aren't there. And he just keeps saying you're gone, that you left town quietly last month." Gone. Left town. Quietly. As if I didn't exist. As if I had just disappeared. I felt something inside me crack in a way I can't describe. At my age, you don't cry as fast as you used to. But that day, the tears came before the reality did. My own son had told the entire family that I was no longer in his life. And the worst part, a few of them believed him. I didn't even grab a coat. I just got in my car and started driving to his house, my hands shaking so badly I could barely keep the wheel straight. I didn't know what I would say or what I would find. I only knew one thing. I had to see it with my own eyes. I pulled up to his house. Lights glowing, cars lining the street, laughter spilling out of the windows. My family was in there. My blood, my memories, my grandchildren. And I wasn't. I walked to the door, my heart pounding the way it did the day I went into labor. I could hear familiar voices. My sister Linda's loud laugh, my cousin Mark's deep voice, the kids running around, giggling. And then I heard Daniel, talking, laughing, entertaining, like a loving son hosting a beautiful family dinner. I pushed open the door without knocking. And when I stepped inside, the entire room froze. My grandkids were the first to react. They gasped and ran toward me. My sister went pale, covering her mouth. My cousins whispered my name like I was a ghost. And standing at the center of it all was Daniel, my son, looking at me like I was the one who had done something wrong. That was the moment everything shattered. That was the moment the truth came out. And that was the moment I realized just how deeply a heart can break, even after 68 long years of living. But before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you what he said, why he lied, and what I found out later that turned the whole story on its head, I want to ask something from you. If this story touches you, if it stirs anything inside you, as a parent, as a child, as someone who's ever been hurt by family, please take a moment to like this video, share it, and subscribe. It means more than you know, and it helps these stories reach people who might need them the most. I remember standing in my quiet kitchen that evening, after learning from my neighbor that my son had been telling people I'd moved away. The words spun around in my head like something unreal, something that couldn't possibly make sense. Why would he say that? Why would he erase me like that? Why would he host a dinner and pretend I wasn't even on this earth anymore? I stood there staring at the sink, my hands resting on the edge, and the hum of the refrigerator was the only sound in the whole house. I thought about calling him, but what would I say? Hey, honey, are you telling people I disappeared? It sounded ridiculous even in my head, so I sat down at the little round kitchen table. The same one where he once did school projects, where he spilled orange juice a dozen times, where he carved his initials underneath as a teenager. My fingers traced that carving now, that little T he scratched in the wood when he thought I wasn't looking. It's a strange thing what memories do when you're hurting. They don't cushion the blow, they deepen it, because every sweet moment you remember reminds you of what you've lost. I made myself a cup of tea, but I didn't drink it. I just held it for warmth, like it could steady the shaking inside me. And I told myself, maybe my neighbor misunderstood. Maybe it wasn't a family dinner. Maybe my son worded something wrong. But deep down I knew something had been off for months. Little signs I ignored because when you're a mother, denial feels like mercy. You tell yourself, he's just busy. He's stressed. He'll come around. But this wasn't forgetting to call. This wasn't being too tired to visit. This was erasing me entirely. And the worst part was, I couldn't figure out why. We hadn't argued. We hadn't disagreed about anything recently. I hadn't said anything harsh. If anything, I'd been trying too hard lately, sending him meals, offering help with the kids, going above and beyond, because being needed is something you hold on to tightly when you're a widow living alone. Maybe I held on too tightly. Maybe I tried too hard. Maybe he felt smothered. But even then, what kind of child pretends his mother is gone? What kind of child tells people she's moved away? Then invites the whole family to celebrate something? Without her, the night stretched long, and sleep didn't come. So I sat on my recliner with the television on low, just for background noise. The house felt heavier than usual, like the walls were holding their breath with me. At around 11 p.m., I picked up my phone and scrolled through old pictures. Him at 5 years old with chocolate all over his mouth from sneaking cake batter. Him at 11 holding his first baseball glove like it was treasure. Him at 17 in his cap and gown with the biggest smile, saying, "Mom, I made it." A mother remembers everything, even when her child remembers nothing. I finally fell asleep sometime after 2 a.m., not really sleeping but drifting in and out of the ache in my chest. And when I woke up the next morning, I felt older. tired in a way that wasn't physical, like something in me had shifted. That day, around noon, I got a text from my sister. "We missed you yesterday. The dinner was lovely. You should have told us you moved. When are you coming back to visit?" I stared at the message for a long time. My heart went cold. My own sister, someone who knows I've lived in the same house for 42 years, thought I had moved away because my son told them that. He didn't just exclude me. He didn't just push me away. He reconstructed a whole story where I didn't exist in his daily life anymore. And everyone believed him. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. Instead, I sat on my couch, hands trembling, and whispered into the empty room, "Why would he do this to me?" Then the guilt came rushing in. Maybe I failed him somehow. Maybe somewhere in my parenting I made him feel controlled or lesser or pressured. Maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe I wasn't the mother he needed. But then a memory hit me, a very recent one. 2 months before, he had asked to borrow money, a significant amount. I told him I couldn't, not because I didn't want to help, but because my late husband's life insurance was what kept me afloat. I was using it to survive, not to invest. And my son hadn't taken that well. He'd gotten cold, distant. He stopped dropping by. He stopped mentioning family gatherings. I brushed it off as embarrassment, figuring he'd warm back up. But what if he wasn't embarrassed? What if he was angry? What if he'd rewritten me as someone gone because that made his life simpler? Socially, financially, emotionally, my heart hurt just thinking about it. A few days passed before I learned the date of the next family dinner. Not from him, never from him, but from my niece, who called to ask if I needed help packing since she heard I'd moved but assumed I'd come back for the holiday. That was the moment something inside me snapped into clarity. My son wanted me erased. Well, then I wasn't disappearing quietly. I decided to show up, not to cause a scene, not to lash out, but because I deserved to know the truth, and I deserved to be seen. The evening of the dinner, I dressed in the blue sweater my daughter-in-law once said brought out my eyes. I curled my hair the way my husband used to like. I looked at myself in the mirror and saw a woman who had given everything, her youth, her energy, her sacrifices, to raise a son who now pretended she wasn't alive. But I also saw a woman who wasn't ready to be erased. I drove slowly, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than normal. The closer I got to my son's house, the harder my heartbeat pounded in my ears. Cars lined the driveway. Laughter spilled through the slightly open windows. Shadows moved inside. Silhouettes of relatives who thought I'd vanished. I parked across the street, sat for a moment, breathed in, breathed out. Then I opened the door and walked up the path. Each step heavy, but steady. I could hear clinking dishes, chatter, the soft hum of a country song playing in the background. Just as I reached the porch, I caught a piece of conversation through the screen door. I recognized my son's voice. He was saying something like, "Yeah, Mom moved away a while back. She needed a new start." My knees almost buckled. Needed a new start? No, he needed a new story. And right then, my hand went to the doorknob, and I walked in. When I walked through that door, everything went completely silent. The kind of silence that pulls the air out of a room. Forks froze midair. Conversations cut off like someone hit a switch. Heads turned one after another, until every pair of eyes in that living room was staring right at me. My son, my only son, stood at the center of it all, holding a serving bowl. His mouth actually fell open a little, like he'd seen a ghost. And for the first time in my life, I almost felt like one. Like I had walked in not as a mother, not as a guest, but as something he had already buried in his mind. I didn't speak at first. I let the silence sit there. I let him feel it. My sister was the first to stand. You're here? She whispered, sounding more confused than anything. I've been here all along. I said softly. I never moved away. A ripple went across the room. Confusion, guilt, whispers, shifting glances. But my eyes stayed locked on my son. He set the bowl down slowly, like he needed both hands to balance whatever was happening. Mom, he said, and the words sounded foreign coming out of him. Don't mom me, I said quietly, not after telling everyone I disappeared. He swallowed hard, glancing around like he wanted an escape route. But there wasn't one. Not from this, not from me, not from the truth. I didn't think you'd show up, he muttered. I noticed, I said, considering I wasn't invited. A few relatives looked down at their plates, realizing they were part of something they didn't understand. Others looked at my son with disbelief. And him, he looked like a man cornered by his own lies. My daughter-in-law stepped forward, her brows drawn tight. Why did you tell us she moved away? She asked him. You never said anything about it. That broke him a little. His face crumpled just for a moment before he straightened again. I didn't want her involved, he said. Okay? She's always interfering, always trying to fix things, always criticizing how I do stuff. My heart sank. So that was it. All the love I gave, interpreted as interference. All the advice, taken as criticism. I only ever tried to help. I whispered. He shook his head. No, Mom, you hover. You always have. Ever since Dad died. You've made me your whole world, and it's suffocating. I needed space. I needed to run things my way with my family, without you showing up with meals or advice, or checking in every 5 minutes. The words hit me like blows, not because they were angry, but because they were honest, painfully honest. I steadied myself. So instead of telling me that you told everyone I was gone, he looked away. It was easier. That cut deeper than anything else he could have said. Easier. Erasing me was easier. My sister stepped in. Why not just talk to her? Because he snapped, then lowered his voice when he realized everyone was watching. Because she makes me feel guilty for wanting boundaries. And I didn't want to hurt her feelings. I let out a shaky breath. You didn't want to hurt my feelings. So you made up a story where I didn't exist. He winced, and I could see it. The shame catching up to him, finally cornering him in the light of his own choices. My granddaughter, his daughter, was sitting at the table, probably around 9 years old. She looked confused, little brows pinched together as she studied her father. Daddy, why would you pretend Grandma left? That pierced him. He crouched next to her. Sweetie, I didn't want to confuse you, but I was confused. Her tiny voice trembled. I cried when Aunt Lisa said Grandma moved away. I didn't want her to go. My hand instinctively reached out. Come here, honey. She ran to me, and I wrapped my arms around her, breathed in her hair, kissed the top of her head. And in that moment, the whole room could see the connection between us. A connection my son had tried to sever with a lie. My son looked at the two of us, and something in him softened. Regret washed over his face. And for the first time that night, he truly looked like the child I raised, not the man who had pushed me aside. I messed up, he said. His voice cracked. I really messed up. I didn't speak. I let him feel the weight of that truth. He needed to, for both of us. Mom, I was angry, he said slowly, about the money, about you saying no. I felt like you didn't trust me, like you didn't believe in me. And instead of talking to you, I shut down. Then I got embarrassed. Then the lie got bigger, and I didn't know how to undo it. A tear slipped down my cheek. All you had to do was come home, sit at my table, tell me you were hurt. I would have listened. I know, he whispered. I know. And I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. The room stayed silent, waiting, watching, unsure if this story would become a reconciliation or a fracture no one could repair. He stepped closer, one small step, then another. His voice shook. I didn't want you gone. I just didn't know how to handle my feelings. But when you walked through that door tonight, I realized how much I needed you, how much the kids need you, how much I miss you. My lips trembled. Then why did you do it? Because I'm human, he whispered, and I made a terrible mistake. Then he did something he hadn't done since he was a teenager. He reached out and took my hands in his. His eyes were wet, pleading. You can be angry at me. You have the right. But please don't walk away from me. Don't walk away from us. My heart broke open in ways I didn't expect, because the truth was, I didn't want to walk away. I never had. I pulled my hands back, gently wiped my face, steadied my breathing, and looked around at the family watching us with bated breath. I didn't come here to punish you, I said. I came here because being erased by your own child is a wound no mother should carry alone. He swallowed hard. Can we fix this? Please. I didn't answer right away. The room was waiting. My granddaughter held my sleeve, her small hand warm against mine. And in that stillness, I realized something important. This wasn't the end. It was the turning point. I looked back at him and said, very softly but very clearly, I walked in because I needed the truth. What happens next depends on what you do from here. And with that, the room exhaled. My son's shoulders sagged, not in defeat, but in release. He nodded, wiping his face. Then I'll do whatever it takes. And that moment, that raw, broken, honest moment, became the hinge on which everything turned. The rest of the evening moved quietly, almost tenderly, like everyone in that room understood they were witnessing something fragile, something years in the making and seconds from breaking. My son sat beside me at the dinner table, the chair that had always been mine, the chair that should have never been empty. He kept glancing at me like he needed reassurance I was really there, really staying, really willing to hear him out. My granddaughter stayed glued to my side. At one point, she held my hand under the table and whispered, "Don't move away again." I squeezed her hand and smiled with watery eyes. "I never moved away, sweetheart," I said. "I was always right here." Dinner was quieter than usual. Conversations were softer, more careful. But something shifted inside the house. The tension untangled. The truth had been spoken, and hearts that had been drifting slowly found their way back toward one another. After most of the family left, my son asked me to stay. He cleaned the dishes while I sat at the kitchen island, watching him. It reminded me of nights when he was younger, when he'd stand on a stool next to me and splash more water than he ever used to wash. He dried his hands and leaned against the counter. "Mom," he said, voice low and raw, "I was scared. That's the truth. Not angry. Scared." "Scared of what?" I asked. "Scared I'd disappoint you. Scared I'd fail. Scared I'd never be the kind of man Dad would have wanted me to be." His eyes shimmered with tears. "You're strong, Mom. Stronger than me." And sometimes that made me feel small. My heart softened in ways I didn't expect. "Honey," I said gently, "strength isn't something you're born with. It's something you learn, one hardship at a time. And you've gone through your own hardships. I never wanted to overshadow you. I just wanted to love you." He stepped closer, the tension in his shoulders falling away with each breath. "I know. I see that now. And I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I took his hand, his big, grown-up hand that once clung to my finger when he learned to walk. "Sometimes," I whispered, "children don't understand their parents until life humbles them enough to look back." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheek. "Can you ever forgive me?" I breathed in deeply. The hurt was real, deeply real, but so was the love. "I already did," I said, "the moment you looked at me with honest eyes." Then I added, softly, "But forgiveness isn't just words. Honey, it's choices. It's effort. It's showing up." He closed his eyes, relieved. "I'll show up. From now on, I'll show up." He pulled me into a hug, a real hug, tight and trembling, the kind he hadn't given me since he was a kid. And in that moment, all the years, all the pain, all the silence melted away like it had never stood a chance against the bond between a mother and her child. Later, when I walked to my car under the porch light, he followed me out. "Mom," he said, stopping me before I opened the door. "Yes, sweetheart. Next Sunday, same time?" But this time he didn't hesitate. "Will you come? As my mother, as part of the family, not as someone who's gone." Tears filled my eyes all over again. "I'll be there," I said. He smiled, a soft, boyish smile I hadn't seen in years, the kind that made my heart feel like it could breathe again. I drove home slowly, the cool night air coming through the cracked window, and for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt light, peaceful, like a wound that had been open for far too long had finally been tended to with truth, love, and humility. When I stepped into my house, I paused at the doorway, looked around, and whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, God, for giving me my son back." The next morning, I woke up to a text message. "Good morning, Mom. I love you. Have a beautiful day." simple words, but as a mother, they wrapped around my heart like a warm blanket. Families break, families bruise, but they also heal slowly, then suddenly, then beautifully. And mine, the little family I built with love, sacrifice, and hope, found its way back to me. If anyone is listening to my story right now, I want you to remember something. Sometimes forgiveness isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about choosing love anyway, choosing healing anyway, choosing family anyway. And I hope, truly hope, that if you're carrying a wound like mine, this story gave you a little warmth, a little strength, and a little faith that broken things can still be mended. So if this touched your heart even a little bit, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support keeps stories like mine alive. And from one heart to another, thank you for listening.